The great thing about this film is that we actually had enough money to bring in outside consultants, which had not been the case in the films we'd done for Roger Corman or Jim's, or even with The Terminator. And we were always huge fans of two people who were very, very different in their design concept. Sid Mead, who's truly a visionary, and he was able to imagine things that might not necessarily ever work, but looked bitchin'.
In 1985, I was one of the 12 judges for the Miss Universe contest in Florida, and I get a call from James Cameron. Tracked me down through my Los Angeles number, and he said, would you like to work on a science fiction film? Because by that time I'd worked on 2010 and Blade Runner and Tron. And I said, sure. So he FedExes down the script. It's delivered. I stayed up all night reading the script, dynamite script. And as a matter of fact, on the airplane back to Los Angeles, started doing sketches of the Sulaco. If you recall in Alien, the Ridley Scott film, the Nostromo looked very much like sort of a moving oil refinery with the towers, and it had no really forward direction axis to it. James wanted something with an axis, a directional axis. So I came up with this spherical thing with this projection off the front with lots and lots of antennas, and proved to be absolutely the wrong direction because of camera focus. Essentially, the thing had to move past the camera lens, and if you had a ball, a spherical shape, the focus would shift from the outline of the craft, the matte line, to towards the lens. I actually received from him a sketch that he had done of his idea for the Sulaco, and that sort of steered the design to the one that I came up with, which was about an 800-foot long, 900-foot long armed cargo carrier, a rocket gun that carries stuff. That was sort of the theoretical concept underlay for the whole design. And the technology was not that exotic. It's not Star Trek. It's a very real-world, industrial-looking piece of stuff. So both the exterior and the interior had sort of accretions of lumps and equipment and surface detail, panelization, and so forth. The dropship compartment was at the bottom, so it could drop out and then deorbit down to the surface. So that was all very logical, very scaled to the size I was working on, and this progressed all the way through the whole design concept.
Ron Cobb comes from a production design background, and his philosophy was, not only am I going to design it, but I'm going to tell you exactly how you can make this work.
Oh, there was a lot of collaboration with Jim, because he always had a sketch or two and contributed, and I was... then I'd go into the details. The utilitarian vehicles, we had to kind of put them together both in miniature and also in real life, so we had to make them fairly practical and kind of see all those little touches. And the interior, long interior column, corridors, and I like doing corridors. But I did the airlock and the colony control room. I did all that in the labs. I did all the labs and things, and the operating room, and certainly all of the colony, really. The casino and a cafe and the lousy weather and such, and it all just fell into place.
The drop ship that I designed was to be the design, and I thought, here's a drop ship. It comes out of the bottom of the Sulaco down towards the planet's surface, and it comes in very fast. So I produced a kind of lifting body with vertical thrusters, much like a Harrier jet. So as it came next to the surface of the planet, it would turn on the thrusters and brake itself. The ramp would drop with the assault vehicle, locked down to the ramp and then released, and would come roaring out because it was an assault vehicle. I had armament that would raise up once the vehicle was free of the dropship and fire forward and clear the field as it progressed. And they sort of kept that with the unfolding arms that come up like that. But I think they're too spindly myself.
The national psyche was still full of Vietnam, so I think that because Jim was going to do it all colonial police kind of things, that there should be a subliminal Vietnam look. So like the drop ship and the tank, but certainly the drop ship is purposely meant to look a little bit like a Phantom jet and a little bit like a Huey helicopter. And it was touched on by Jim and myself, and we all winked. We got it.
When they started to build the sets, they built the large version first, and then did the model after that to make it look like it matched, which is the in the reverse of what they usually do.
We are confined, when Sid does some of his stuff, it's absolutely mind-boggling. But of course, we are hampered by how much space we've got in the studio.
The great thing about Peter Lamont is that he's able to actually bring these fantastical designs to life. Coming from the Bond tradition, he was able to make anything, no matter how fantastical, practical, and also did things that were outside of the box.
Jim knew the kind of limitations that we had, with all this stuff that we were acquiring from anywhere. With the undercarriage of the dropship, we wanted this huge, chunky stuff. Well, at that time, the Royal Air Force were just kind of breaking up all their Vulcans, and my brother, who was working with me, went up to Swaffham in Norfolk, where there was one of these breakers, and we rented the undercarriage from a Vulcan. Brought it down here, and the skids were actually flare trays from a Canberra, and it was all this rubbish that we got, from everywhere. It just came off.
One thing that I was really pleased with, which was certainly in the realm of humor, unfortunately just didn't get seen. It wasn't done. It wasn't executed properly. It was done too quickly. I wanted to do nose art on the dropship, a great big cartoon like the Second World War, And what I came up with is the slang that was in the script was that aliens were always bugs, and these Marines were bug stompers, is what they call. So I did a big cartoon of an eagle, kind of a screaming eagle with a kind of a futuristic machine gun, firing down with giant combat boots on, flying, falling and firing with cartridges flying in a circle, which was to go on the side of the nose of the dropship. And then the slogan was, "We endanger species." and Jim had jackets made with that on and everything. And then in the movie, it's about that small, and you can't see it. It's way too small, and it just got by me. I wasn't able to. So anyhow.
We shot at the Acton Power Plant, which was a decommissioned coal generating plant within London. And that was pretty difficult. We found it was a perfect location.
What Jim really liked about it was all the walkways, the stairways were all grilled. So in effect, when you looked down, you could see from top to bottom. There were problems. It was all rusty. It had been deactivated for about 2 years, 3 years, all rusty. But the biggest problem was asbestos, because, all the lagging, it was an old coal-fired one, and it was all covered in asbestos everywhere.
We had to spend a great deal of money with asbestos mitigation to make sure that it was safe for us to film in. And by the time we were done with it, we had to take readings of the air quality in there multiple times a day. And we found out that it was actually healthier there after we'd mitigated it than it was in the sound stages at Pinewood Studios.
Sid Mead obviously is a futurist. His APC was gigantic, had wheels 10 feet in diameter. And to get anything of that scale, you get big trucks that operate in these huge open cast mining areas. But what did come to mind at that time, British Airways over at Heathrow do have these big towing vehicles. The tyres are those about 6 feet in diameter. And at that time, they were just re-equipping all the towing tugs with a new look, and we managed to get hold of one of the old ones. It had 6 foot diameter wheels. There was one problem though, it weighed 75 tons, and when we purchased it, we brought it in here, we removed 35 tons of lead, and that became the APC, or the base of the APC, but we had to then build an interior, so we made a sliding door where about 3 people could get inside. It was converted by a company near here in Slough called Lynn Cars. It did bring on one or two pains though when we took it to the power station that we used for the Alien complex, because it weighed so much we had to reinforce the floor, because you know these power stations are as deep as they are high, so we had to do a lot of shoring up of when we could almost see the road rippling, but it came off very well. We were very hampered for budget. The whole budget for the construction was about $1.5 million, which is not much money, really, on the scale of what we were trying to achieve. When we were doing Ripley's cabin, Sid came up with a scheme of how Ripley's apartment could look at, and of course, you know, he can become very complicated. So I unscrambled it a bit and made the elements that we could actually vac form, and by adding and subtracting we could actually change each piece. The little toilet was actually a British Airways 707 toilet that we'd bought on block, where she wakes up when she's had the dream again of the chest burster. We could actually get her putting the taps on and sloshing at her face with water. The whole thing looked as it should. And I remember Gail saying to me one day with Tim Hampton, you know, we're kind of seriously running out of money, where can we save money? And I said, the only place we can save money is where we haven't spent it. If we've built the set, you haven't saved it. If you don't shoot it, you've only saved the amount of time to shoot it. So she said, well, what have we done so far? So I said, well, hypersleep and, you know, all that bit. So she said, well, let's cut it out. So I said, we can't cut it out, you know, it's an integral part of the film. So I went back to my office and I thought about it, went down on the floor and spoke to Jim. And I said, look, you've got to have the set, you know, come what may, you've got to have it. But we do have a problem with hypersleep, because, you know, if you want it all controlled with pneumatics or hydraulics and all that, it's going to cost a lot of money, you know. So I said, you know, if we could do it in the old-fashioned way on wires and stuff like that, you know, because we had built one of the capsules already, or we'd got the kind of the bones of it. And I said, you know, if we mirror it as well, we double it. If we double mirrored it, it goes into infinity. We've got thousands of people with us. It's one of the old gags, use a big mirror, you know. We should double everything. I've just done my dining room anyway. With all this kind of old rubbish we'd got, we made a great set, I think. We'd used everything that we had. All the lockers came from down on the set that we'd used for the armoury, and we got old vending machines. And if you look carefully, behind each hypersleep there were these big kind of circular things. They were helicopter engines. You know, it was amazing what you can do.
I was very, very pleased with how all that stuff turned out. Gee, because you know, often when you're doing it, you worry a lot until you really see it cut, almost until it's cut together. Maybe a set might not look right until it's cut together in just the right way and lit in just the right way, and suddenly it all comes to life. You just sweat it until you see it, and if you buy it, you buy it, you know, and that's nice. It really held together.